Hey guys, today we are going to divide some radicals. So last week and the beginning part of this week, we learned how to add and multiply them, and now we are going to learn to divide them. So dividing radicals is also sometimes called rationalizing the denominator. And the reason we have to do that is because a long time ago, some mathematicians decided that it was improper to have a radical on the bottom of your square root or of your fraction. So you have to be able to get rid of it. You're not allowed to have a radical on the bottom. So when you finish these problems, your radical should not be in the denominator at all. So the first step you're going to do is to simplify. So that's just like what we did last week when we simplified the radicals. We checked to see if any numbers could come out. We will simplify the numbers in the front if we can. And then we're going to multiply the top and bottom. So multiplying the top and bottom will help us get rid of the radical. The reason it helps us get rid of the radical is if I have the square root of 2 and I want to get rid of a square root without squaring, if I just multiply by that square root of 2 again, then I'll get the square root of 4, because 2 times 2 is 4, which is just 2. So when I multiply a square root by itself, it cancels. It'll work for any square root. So if I have the square root of 8 times the square root of 8, that just gives me 8. It does not matter what you stick underneath the radical. If you multiply by the same thing, it gets rid of it. So when I have a square root on the bottom, all I have to do is multiply the top and bottom by the square root of x, or whatever it is, and that just gives me the square root of x on top and x on the bottom. But if I'm given a higher root, it's a little bit different. The reason these cancel is because there's two 2's and there's that imaginary little 2 right here. Your higher root is going to give you numbers underneath of there. So I have a number on the outside and I can have a number on my exponent. So what you multiply by is the index minus the exponent. And you do that on the top and bottom. And then on top, you'll just have that nasty looking thing right here, which looks nicer when we have just numbers. And on the bottom, we're given just x. So just real quick, let's say I had the third root of 3 on the bottom of my fraction. If I have a 3, I know this 3 really has a little 1 right here. So what do I have to multiply by? This is where people usually get confused. I would multiply by 3 minus 1, so 3 squared. Because that will give me 3 3's underneath the radical. Because it would be 3 and then 3 to the third, which those 3's would cancel, and that's how I just get 3. So you need the number on the exponent to match the index. That's why if I had 1, I need 2 more, and that would have given me 3. So let's just try it. Don't forget that when you're done, you should try to simplify again, just so you know what's going on and you make sure you have it in the simplest form. So if I look at the first one, I have a square root. First thing I check is if I can simplify anything. The numbers in the front I can't simplify, and the numbers underneath I can't simplify. So I'm going to multiply by whatever that radical is, which is the square root of 2 on the bottom. So I just multiply by the square root of 2 on the top and bottom. And that gives me square root of 10 on top. I just bring along this 5 for the ride, and the square root of 2 times the square root of 2 is just 2. So then I get the square root of 10. On the top and the bottom is just 10. I'm going to change this example a little bit because I want to make sure we have, let's make that an 8, and let's make this a 24. Yeah, let's do that. All right, so I have an example like this one, the first thing I'm going to do is check to see if I can simplify. And I can. 8 over 2 would just make it a 4 on top, because 2 goes into 8 4 times. And then 3 will divide into 24. 3 divides into 24 and makes it a square root of 8 on the bottom, which isn't too bad. Now I know the square root of 8. You can do this in 2 steps, but two different ways, but I'm going to simplify the square root of 8 first. Square root of 8 is 4 and 2, and then 2 and 2. So I would need 2 to come out. So I'd have 4 over 2 with a 2 left over, so square root of 2. Again, I could simplify because 4 over 2 now simplifies. So you might have a lot of steps of simplifying before you actually get to getting rid of your square root on the bottom. So 4 over 2 just becomes 2 on top and a square root of 2 on the bottom. Now, this is where you might want to get rid of the square root of 2. It's where you will get rid of the square root of 2. To get rid of that square root of 2, I just multiply by the square root of 2 on the top and bottom. So the top, I'm going to move down here, is just 2 square root of 2 over 2 times square root of 2 times square root of 2 is just 2. So I got the square root off the bottom, but my third step says I should try to simplify again. There's a 2 on the outside and a 2 right here. So those would just cancel. And my final answer is just the square root of 2. So when you're doing these, you need to simplify, 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 and then multiply. You will have the best luck if you do that. So looking at this next example, I'm going to try to simplify. My numbers don't simplify on the outside because I only have one number. And then a 4 won't simplify and a 5 won't simplify because that's a third root. So this 5 has a little 1 on it. And I need 3, so my radicals will cancel. So that means I'm going to multiply by the third root of 5 squared. And then I'm going to do that same thing to the top, the third root of 5 squared. Because I need 3 and I only have 1, I have to do 5 squared. So then I just multiply that. On the bottom, I have a 2, and then these just cancel and I just get 5. That's why we did it. I'm just going to get 5 on the bottom. And then on top, I'm going to have the third root of 4 times 5 squared. So I should probably figure out what that is. 5 squared is 25 times 4 is 100. So I have the third root of 100. And on the bottom, I have 2 times 5, which is just 10. You might want to check to see if 100 breaks down for a third root. So down here, 2 and 50. 50 is 5 and 10. And then 2 and 5. But there's not 3 of a kind for anything, so this is my final answer. Now, we have the third root of 4. You can do this in 2 ways. You can say the 4 has a little 1 on it, and then you need 2 more 4s. Or, 4 is 2 and 2. So, 4, I could rewrite it as 2 squared. If I do that, then I only need 1 more 2. So I have less to simplify as I go on. So I'm just going to multiply by the third root of just 2, because I just need 1 more in order to make those cancel. And that's what I'm going to multiply on top as well. On top, I just do 3 times 2. So the third root of 6. And on the bottom, I just get 2, because that's what I wanted to happen. I can't simplify that because the 2 is not underneath the radical, so I cannot divide those. That is my final answer. Now, sometimes we're going to have binomials on the bottom. So this, we only had one thing on the bottom. Nothing was added or subtracted. Sometimes we're going to start adding and subtracting things onto the bottom. To do that, if we look down here, we have a minus 2 square root of 3, and here we have a 3 plus square root of 2. It changes things. That's when you have to start multiplying by a conjugate. A conjugate is just changing the middle sign. So let's say I had 3 minus square root of 5. The conjugate of that is just 3 plus the square root of 5. That's its conjugate. So that's what you learn to multiply by. If it's a plus, so if I have 4 plus square root of 7, the conjugate is just 4 minus square root of 7. So it's pretty easy, the conjugate. You just change the middle term. You do that because it's going to get rid of your radical. So looking at this first example, the conjugate would just be negative 4 plus 2 square root of 3. And that's what I'm going to multiply on the top and bottom. I just changed that middle sign to a plus. On the top, that's super simple. All you're going to do is distribute that 2. So if I distribute that 2 on top, I get negative 8 plus 4 square root of 3. So that's what I get on top. On the bottom, I'm going to have to FOIL it, just like we've done before. So I would do negative 4 times negative 4, and that gives me 16. And then I would do negative 4 times 2, square root of 3, which gives me negative 8 square root of 3. Then I'm going to take this negative 2 square root of 3 to both things and get plus 8 square root of 3, because negative 2 times negative 4 is 8. And then I take it to this one, and I get negative 2 times negative 2 is negative 4. And square root of 3 times square root of 3 is just the square root of 9, or you know it changes to 3 because we've talked about that. And that's still multiplied to that negative 4. So on top, there's nothing else to simplify. You just drop down the negative 8 plus 4 square root of 3. On the bottom, your square roots cancel. It's always going to cancel or you mess something up. So negative 8 and that 8 go away. And then you have 16. And negative 4 times 3 is negative 12. So your final answer is just negative 8 plus 4 square root of 3 over 4. Now, if you leave it there because you forget, I am fine with that. But one more step you could do is take that 4 and divide it into both things, because this and this are divisible by 4. If you do that, you would just get negative 2 plus square root of 3 with nothing left on the bottom. Alright, we're going to do one more example. This one's a little more challenging because there's addition on top as well, but you're going to do it the same way. We're going to multiply by the conjugate, and the conjugate of 3 plus the square root of 2 is just 3 minus the square root of 2. Remember, our goal is to get rid of the square root on the bottom, and that's why we're doing that. I'm going to go ahead and put those in parentheses because I know I'm going to have to FOIL twice. So then I get 3 minus the square root of 2 on top as well to multiply. And then I'm just going to FOIL. So I get 4 times 3 is 12. 4 times negative square root of 2 is just negative 4 square root of 2. Then I'm going to multiply this. 2 times 3 is 6. And then I just bring along the square root of 3. And then I drop down a minus 2. And then square root of 3 times square root of 2 is square root of 6. So that's the top. The bottom, if I start multiplying, 3 times 3 is 9. 3 times negative square root of 2 is negative 3 square root of 2. Then I got plus 3 square root of 2. And then square root of 2 times negative square root of 2 is a negative square root of 4. You can skip writing that square root of 4 because you know it's just 2. Or if you need to write it, make sure you do so you don't get too confused. Then you just combine things. If I look on top, I have lots of square roots, but none of the radicands, or the numbers underneath, are the same. So I cannot combine anything on top. I'm just going to rewrite it in 812 minus 4 square root of 2 plus 6 square root of 3 minus 2 square root of 6. And then on the bottom, if I did things correctly, I should have no more square roots. So my negative 3 square root of 2 and my positive 3 square root of 2 cancel. And then I'm just left with 9 minus 2, which is 7. I look at all the numbers, and they're not all divisible by the same thing. So that's my final answer. And that's dividing radicals. Now, if you're confused, try to do the problems, but when you come back to school, I can help you go over them so you're no longer confused.